dark, cold world out there.
There's a time to live and a time for a man to die. There are places for dead men in the earth and the sky. Don't you venture too far now, 'cause you can't come back from the place where the good guys always dress in black. When you go to the old saloon at the dead South End, gonna find you a man there wants to be your friend. If you dare to deny his wish, you'll be dead by dawn. So give him a drink and a smile and then move right on. Rednecks with white faces, don't go putting on down. Rednecks with white faces, they ain't no rodeo clowns.
Hurricane, a tidal wave. Essence perfect, life looks brilliant. Give me more of this. I'm out of control, about to blow, and I've been caught in the undertow. So toxic, but I can't get enough. You're firing me, firing me. Yeah, you're firing me, firing me. You've got me hypnotized. Push me out of myself. You've got me hypnotized. Whoa. I can see, I can hear, going crazy by the light. It's got me hypnotized. You've got me hypnotized. Can get you out of my hand.
We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. So put your hands on me and turn me on, turn me up. We don't need no sleep because the party don't stop. So put your hands on me and turn me on, turn me up.
And boom, just like that, it's Thursday night. You know what that means. It's party time with your boys, the Video Bros. I'm one half of that team. I'm Bobby Munson. And the man beside me, you know how to do this, people. He's the man with the angelic voice, Papa Smokes. Papa Smokes, happy Thursday. How are you doing, brother?
Oh yeah, baby, Thursday again, and especially glad to be here because it is Ring Respect Radio and a trip through the territories, the latest episode. This is when Papa Smokes really wants to shine.
It's been a fantastic show thus far. We've had a part 2 on Stampede Wrestling. We had that great run with, WCCW with the very first one, and we're going to continue the success of a trip through the territories, try to do our best to educate and talk to people about the history of professional wrestling. And this time we're taking a little trip to Jim Crockett territory, Pop Smokes. So let's roll the film. Let's get ready for a trip through the territory. So kind of got a combination of a lot of different theme music and openers here tonight, Pop Smokes. Through it a little.
Hell yeah.
Cool. I want to jazz up the opening video again for these trip through the territories ones. We're going to add a little bit more content to it and really get it rocking and rolling. But I had to bring back that there at your request, Pop Smokes.
Great job, Munson. The intro looks great. And, just like we were talking about, it'd be nice to just have it streamlined for a trip through the territories. Something a little older sounding is something a little more classic, a little more retro. Really like the video you put with it. And that song, Rednecks with White Faces, was our Ring Respect song for a long time in the early days. Really like that. Really a pleasure to bring it back.
You bet. It's a good classic one, and glad that it's there. But speaking of classics, we got to talk a little bit about well, not a little bit, a whole lot about Jim Crockett here, Papa's folks. Jim Crockett, I want you to get us into this. Let's talk a little bit about the territory and how Jim Crockett Promotions got started and what it kind of expanded into.
Well, for sure. I mean, if we're going to go way back, we all know Jim Crockett Jr. as the big promoter that through the 70s and 80s and 90s that kept Jim Crockett Promotions going, but it was actually Jim Crockett Sr. that started in the promotions business back in the late 40s, early 50s, I think. And he had his fingers in a number of different pies, including boxing, wrestling, music shows, and all kinds of events where large amounts of people would gather to watch a show of some kind.
Yeah, you bet. And again, on the wrestling side, wrestling was part of that and was the core of what he was promoting. And that was why when you say Jim Crockett Promotions, you're not necessarily talking about one particular company. You're talking about a multitude of different companies that kind of landed under that name, or different name changes that occurred throughout the years. But more notoriously known as Mid-Atlantic Wrestling was the big one that was promoted under the Jim Crockett Promotions side of things. But also some of the names that came up were East Coast Wrestling, Championship Wrestling, All-Star Wrestling, Worldwide Wrestling that had variations of that name as well too. Inevitably, one day, I guess, arguably WCW, which is the formation of what came from Jim Crockett Promotions as well, too. Long ways to get to that just yet, but just a couple of things I'd throw out there to kick things off.
For sure. And I would say that the variants of different names that were used for it was the same territory, so to speak, in wrestling, but you got to remember that this is back in the days before national TV deals, so Crockett would have been running shows. He ran them largely in the Carolinas, but that's two different states, North and South. He ran in Virginia. He ran a little bit in Tennessee, even a little bit in Georgia. So he had to make deals with the local television stations in the markets that his product would be viewed in. So in those days, the TV stations themselves and the content directors and the program directors of the private private television stations would have some say on the branding of the product as well, since they were carrying it. I think hence the different names of some of those. You had the All-Star Wrestling and a couple of the other ones that you mentioned might have been a function of the TV stations wanting to have some say in what their products, excuse me, were named and branded as at that time.
Yeah, you bet. It wasn't, and then it wasn't until 1952, I believe, that they officially joined up with the NWA and started running under a lot of NWA shows. In fact, if you go look at some of the Jim Crockett Promotions matchups that you can find within YouTube and stuff like that, Papa Spokes, I believe that you'll see a lot of the NWA branding from the ring, from the style, and of course, too, it looks a lot like the NWA style of professional wrestling that was on syndicated television.
Well, for sure. And Crockett, now I'm going to talk about Jim Crockett Jr., I think, was the first member of the NWA board, which was, of course, the board that tied together the territories in the way that they would have one over-reigning champion who would tour those territories and put over their top guys. This was a genius business plan. As long as you could get the right champion, the right versatile champion that NWA board could agree on, then you would get your Harley Race or your Ric Flair, who would tour all around those territories, all the members of the NWA. Think of what a huge job that was, Munson, for the NWA champion back in the day to tour through all the territories, all the way from the Northeast to the Northwest, down all through the South. You're doing Memphis, you're doing Florida, Texas, Louisiana, everything, all the way through, everything except for New York, basically. You'd be touring through, and the champion would be putting over each top guy of each territory. And you can imagine, everyone wants to say the NWA champ would have been the best wrestler at the time. Yeah, that's partly true, but you had to get the right guy, excuse me, that could handle all that touring and could be versatile enough to work with different opponents with different styles every single night. It was an extremely tough job. It's not like today where you'd be wrestling your other contracted talent in your same company and you would just get recycled through the same guys. No, this was a different opponent, different style, different town every single night. But that was the beauty of being a member of the NWA is you would get the overall champion into your territory. You would get at least one huge show out of that per year, and you would get a lot of mileage points on your top guy for hanging with the world champion.
You bet. Now, notoriously, they were known a lot for their tag team wrestling. It's why the Crockett Cup became such a big thing. It wasn't until a lot later when I believe that they brought in George Scott as the promoter that he kind of went down the road of bringing in singles competition to the promotion more so than what Jim Crockett Jr. or Senior, had done previously with making it primarily tag team promotion.
For sure. And that's what happens in some of these promotions as well. As they operate for a number of years, it can go stale. Even when the fans like it, there has to be a time after who knows what it's going to be with your particular fan base, but it might be 10 years, might be 15 years, might even be 20 years. But at some point, you're going to have to reset those fans because you just can't keep running the same thing forever. It just won't continue drawing or moving forward, drawing the huge numbers of fans that it did in the past. You're going to have to reset at some point. That's exactly what Crockett Jr. did from the time of his dad. His dad had set up a strong company and a perfectly good promotion, but Jim Crockett Jr. knew that he was going to have to re-educate the fans to a certain extent to a different style of wrestling. And remember, too, this is the South. In the South, they have different tastes than other areas of the country. I mean, New York with the McMahons always had a big money, big prize fight feel. They kind of made it competitive sport like boxing and stuff. The wrestling fans of the South wanted something different than that. They wanted wildness. They wanted mayhem. They wanted blood and guts. So that's what Crockett Jr. knew as well. And he of course, was going to put a little bit of that in his shows too, but he wanted to get it going different. He wanted to get some scientific wrestlers in there as well and get some tactical wrestling, some, as they used to call it, scientific style wrestling in there as well, just to change the fans, to give them a little bit, and to add some legitimacy to his promotion as well by getting some of the top workers in the business.
Oh, of course, yeah. Now, I know we had talked earlier, Papa Smokes, you wanted to be able to possibly share a matchup here on the channel. We're going to do our best. We're going to do our best to bring it in here. It might be a little bit of a smaller screen and the volume turned way down low so we don't get any of those pesky YouTube little strikes against us. I don't think we will because I think a lot of this material seems to be up on YouTube without anything. We will be using this for the contents of, really just try to educate and have some fun with you guys here today. So hopefully YouTube understands that this is for creative purposes. Now, what am I looking for exactly here, Pop Smokes? We agreed on this strap match, the Horseman versus Wahoo McDaniel. I don't know if I'm seeing that one here. I'm seeing one from 86 with the two of them as well as Dusty Rhodes is what I've got.
Yeah, that's it, I think.
That's 13 minutes? Okay, perfect. I will go about getting this one. In the meantime, if there's anything else you want to start sharing prior to me having this match on, I will get this loaded up here for everybody right now.
Well, just to kind of intro it in a little bit, this is kind of what I was just talking about in terms of the way you wanted to balance your promotion between what the fans want and then what you want to do as a promoter to bring your promotion higher, to get more draws and to get more respect in the wrestling world. You're going to have to balance giving the fans their favorites that they expect to see every week. You got to bring in some big stars, some big money talent. You got to have blood and guts and some mayhem, but then you've got to have some good technical wrestling style too. What we're going to watch here is probably more of an example of big name talent coming in for a blood and guts match, and you know that Crockett would have been thinking he's going to get a big draw and a big gate out of this, out of a match like this. This is going to be good, a strap match. Let's get into this.
You bet. And I encourage anybody, again, we're only going to be throwing up this small screen right here. If you really want to dig into this one and watch it, you can go check this out. It is listed on YouTube as 1986 NWA House Show Bull Rope Strap Match, the Horsemen versus Dusty Rhodes and Wahoo McDaniel. So again, we had mentioned about wanting to really get some wrestlers, at least one or two wrestlers inside that ring that maybe the modern day fans weren't as familiar with. They're very familiar with Dusty Rhodes, but I mentioned Wahoo McDaniel. It's a name we've mentioned many times on the channel, and I'm pretty certain Wahoo's not one that the modern day fans are as well versed with his work.
Well, yeah, that's too bad because Wahoo was a huge star in the 70s and 80s, a former NFL football player, and he was legit tough. No one screwed with this guy. You want to talk about some of the stars today that have the big chops, guys like Walter, or I should say Gunther, guys that have the huge chops that resonate throughout the building. Just wait till you get a load of Wahoo.
All right, well, here we go. I'm going to load this thing up, and away we go. And as we in 1986, this was an NWA house show. Again, I know you read a lot of the magazines back in this time. Did you hear a lot about this particular event back in the day, or anything of that sort?
No, not really, but I bet you this was one that they did more than once in a couple of different towns. It'd be a match with some star power and also some violence to it. They could have probably gotten a pretty good house in most of their territory, if not all of it, with a match like this. This would have been a main event for sure.
What a huge raucous crowd there, too. Again, wrestling crowds back in these days, back in the territories days, seemed to just absolutely sell out large arena shows. Everybody was there for the spectacle. They were there to absolutely just boo the guys they hated. They loved who they loved and everything like that, too. Going back and watching a lot of these matches, sometimes it's not even just the matches that is worth your investment. It is listening to these crowds and look at it as we pan across the size of that house show matchup. And I reiterate, house show matchup right there. I know a lot of companies right now that would kill for a gate like that at a house show, let alone a regular weekly program.
Oh, for sure. And I'm not sure what this venue is, but it looks the size of a basketball arena or a hockey arena. And it's absolutely full, including that upper deck there, too. So that's got to be, let's say conservatively, it might be 10, 13, 15,000 people.
You bet. And it's going to be one hell of a battle, that's for damn sure. And I did go back during this time studying for Jim Crockett Promotions, watched there's a lot of material online. You can get full playlists from different years from Jim Crockett Promotions, the link up with the NWA, a lot of just great classic wrestlers, a lot of great names that you're familiar with, names that are big even today because of the legacy that they've left behind. A lot of great people graced Jim Crockett Promotions back in the day.
All the great ones, for sure. And that was for a reason, too, because Crockett drew well, and therefore the payouts were good for the wrestlers. That's what drew them all there. It was like, aside from New York and the WWF, it was the NFL of wrestling, so to speak. You might want to go there, but they might not have room for you because all the top guys in all the territories wanted to go there.
Now, I got to ask with Wahoo McDaniel, because we're saying that like a lot of people nowadays maybe not so familiar with him. Is there any particular reason why that name has not been brought up more with modern day professional wrestling? Why companies have not mentioned Wahoo McDaniel, or why we haven't seen any modern wrestlers talk about having grown up watching Wahoo McDaniel and maybe idolizing some of the work that he did?
Well, I hear about that on some of the podcasts I listen to about older stuff. And I saw Wahoo when I was a kid live a number of times. Possibly it's that he never won a world championship, I don't think. He had plenty of belts and a lot of tag team stuff. And he was big in with Dusty and Murdoch and all the big guys of the time. Like he wasn't quite at that superstar status. I'm not sure what that had to do with, but he was well respected as a huge college and NFL football player, and then just being tough as nails in the ring. I think the guys liked him too. Everybody speaks highly of Wahoo.
Again, it's kind of interesting too. This being a house show, even the camera work for 1986, pretty decent for being a standard house show. This is prior to the times of large production values. I mean, outside of what they were starting to do over in the WWF, and I do say starting to do over in the WWF, this is quite insane how good they were able to get a camera in there to be able to capture this entire audience. I know to look at it, it's not the HD quality that the modern day fans are used to, but just in general, to be able to capture that action and really be able to get that focus on the ring itself is great. And again, there's that bull rope that they've got there.
And it's wild to think that where this camera is, it by the perspective here, it looks like it might be sitting on the mezzanine at the top of the seats of the bowl, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like up on the edge of the concourse, because he's higher than the ring there. And I think that might be where the camera is, at the top of the sections of the lower bowl there.
Yeah, that was what I was kind of picturing myself too. Again, this is the time, like, if you went and watched their production on their regular programming and stuff that they did for the tapings and everything, had that studio quality to it. The stuff that, if anybody watched the earlier days of NWA Power, once it got reignited by Billy Corgan, it has a lot of that NWA feel to it, the way that it's put together, the way the commentary goes together. And while this is going on, because we don't have any live commentary on this matchup, can I bring up the commentary from Jim Crockett Promotions as well too? That eventually it was Junior's brother David Crockett that ended up being part of that team after a long list of different
son,
yes, yeah. I said Junior's brother, I think, was what I had mentioned there, but
okay, yeah,
because David Crockett Jr. took over kind of the promotion and the booking and stuff like that. David Crockett took over as part of the commentary team with Bob Caudle. Bob Caudle, a name that maybe doesn't get brought up very often in the commentary world here, but Bob Caudle, fantastic work, and he seemed to really hit his stride. He had a lot of different guests, but once David Crockett hit there, it worked out to be quite the team on the commentary side.
Yeah, not too bad. I like Caudle a lot. There's nothing fancy or exciting about his style. He's kind of quite typical of wrestling announcers at this time. They wanted an older guy that sounded like he knew what he was talking about, somebody with a background in announcing and speaking on camera. I think Caudle had worked as a sports guy at one of the TV stations that they were broadcasting their show on, and brought him in to do wrestling. This is at a time, Munson, where sometimes the announcers weren't even smartened up to the business sort of thing. Like same thing with Ed Whalen we talked about in Stampede days. Like, the boys never smartened him up. He kind of knew that there was something up with wrestling, but he wasn't completely sure. So you get that genuine reaction from your announcers where they're not exactly sure what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it makes it tough with commentary if you don't know what, if you know what's going on, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But man, this match is already chaos, getting hit back and forth with the rope, with the bell, everything like that. As we say good evening to a third video, bro. It's Basser up in the house joining us here tonight. Basser, how are you doing, brother? We're talking some Jim Crockett Promotions here. We're watching a match. We got Dusty Rhodes and Wahoo McDaniel taking on the Horsemen. Now, again, the Horsemen, a little explanation on that side of the fence, Papa Smokes. What do you know about them that you can tell to the fans?
Well, we all know that there were various incarnations of the Four Horsemen, and that worked to their advantage as well, because now they've got a group of four guys, and at a time when the territories might be doing 3 shows a week in various markets in a particular territory, you can send 2 to one show, you can send 2 to the other show, you can split them up, you can use them wherever you need them. I have the feeling that's exactly what happened with this match. So we need an opponent for Dusty and Wahoo for the strap match. which two of you do I have on the other show? All right, I'm going to use these two for this one.
We're still talking about a time where sometimes they would book daily shows. These guys were working some sort of market on a daily basis, sometimes twice, even in the same day that these guys would wrestle.
For sure, the schedules were insane back then. No wonder those guys got sore from taking a lot of bumps and stuff. It wasn't like nowadays where you work 1 or 2 days a week. It was 6 days at least a week, and sometimes twice a day. But look at this, they get it going real fast. They've got a plan, they know what they're going to do, and they're going to get in and out before 15 minutes is up. That's smart. The wrestling fans will get invested in that time. They don't need a whole bunch of false finishes. They don't need a whole bunch of slapping contests in the middle of the ring. Look at these guys. They're going for it right here. Big shots with the bell, big shots with the strap. And you know this match is not going to last forever with what they're doing to each other in there.
You bet. And look who we got up in the house here joining us as well, too. We got Mick Wiggin in the house saying the young Kippers don't know a hard schedule. I tell you, Mick Wiggin, how you doing? Thanks for joining us here on Ring Respect Radio.
Boris Vision. We want Boris Vision.
Boris Vision sounds like a great plan. And might be trying to talk to Mr. Boris there about possibly joining us here on a Ring Respect Radio very soon, Papa Smokes.
Yeah,
something is in the works, and we're gonna get that very, very dashing man on the show here to talk about some PPW. In the meantime, and in between time, back to this matchup that is just, again, complete carnage. These guys just absolutely wrecking each other. And again, Dusty Rhodes, a lot of people that knew him in his WWF run don't really know just how chaotic some of his matches became. I mean, notorious for being inside the War Chamber, the War Games matchups. God, it's terrible I call it War Chamber now. War Games matchups, including some of these matches like this one here, where Dusty was not afraid to be in there to give out some color and get some color himself.
Yeah, never afraid of that. Dusty came up through Texas wrestling with the Funks and with Dick Murdoch and all those guys. He was a roughneck all the way. So even as a babyface, he knew how to take it, how to give it out too. I wouldn't be surprised if Dusty and Wahoo were calling this match as well. I bet you the guys didn't even barely talk beforehand. They're just talking inside the ring in terms of give me some more, keep her going, keep her going. That's how those guys called the match like that. Just more heat, more heat. They're not calling the spots. They're not telling you what to do. They know each other. These guys all know that they're professionals, and they know that it's going to go well. It's just reading the fans, reading the crowd, and reading the energy in the room, and deciding when it's right to keep building heat, when it's right to build up to a climax, to a finish, all that stuff.
And just like that.
Oh, whoa.
That, again, looks like just an absolute ruckus crowd there. What a hell of a show, hell of a fight as well, too. And again, I encourage anybody to go check out tons and tons of this stuff. It's all over YouTube. You can educate yourself on pro wrestling history just by going down the rabbit hole on YouTube. Many people are looking for the best independent wrestling matches to watch or recapping, their favorites from WWE and AEW. Spend a day, a week, or a month even, and allow yourself the opportunity to sit down with all these different promotions that existed in the territory days, some of these forgotten wrestlers. Here's the best part. Here's some advice for a modern day wrestler. Not that I should be giving any out. Go look at some forgotten wrestlers and think about some of the stuff they're doing and how you could turn that into a modern day way of presenting yourself in a professional wrestling ring. I'm not talking about just going completely old school, but there is certain mannerisms, there are certain actions that some of these wrestlers used to take that I feel with a little bit of tweaking in a modern ring could actually look quite sharp. And bye-bye to you there, sir. But there we go. That was a hell of a match. And yeah, Papa Smokes, what can you tell us from that? I know you said you had a lot that you wanted to talk about that came across from that. So the floor is yours. Let us know.
Oh, for sure. One of the first things I think of watching that match is just, like you said, the raucous crowd, so wild, so loud. All the fans are on the same page. They want the same thing. And we've seen that a lot in our local promotion, PPW. We have a fan base that's of one mind. They're very, very clever. They're very smart, and they're very loyal to the wrestlers that they love. Now times that by a couple hundred to put 12,000 or 15,000 people, not hundreds, but thousands and thousands in a basketball or hockey arena like we just saw. It's amazing when you think about it. But that's what the South is for wrestling, especially during those 60s and 70s and 80s. They were one of the most devout groups of wrestling fans there were out there, and they liked their particular style of. That's why I always like to pronounce it like that, Munson. Wrestling. It's a little different than professional wrestling. It's the same thing, but it's done in a different style. It's like the violin versus the fiddle. It's the same instrument, but the name changes depending on how you play it. And that's what this was with wrestling back in the South in the old days. And we're going to go through various promotions as we do the trip through the territories. We're going to see the same thing from the Carolinas, like we're talking about tonight, through Tennessee, through Florida, and through Alabama and Virginia, and a bunch of those southern states. They like their wrestling. They like their homegrown talent, their favorites. They like to see the blood and guts. They like to see the heat build up for a huge feud, and they're going to cheer the hell out of that babyface. It's very similar to the normal model of pro wrestling. It's just more localized, and the Southern fans, they just like it a little wilder than everybody else.
They sure do. Gonna go back to this. This comment was held for review by Twitch. God damn it! But I'll let this slide. I'm lovely lads. How are you two? Our Jack's Bloody Show. I'll give him a kick in the arse. Get him working on it. We're doing fantastic, man. Anytime we can hang out here on Ring Respect Radio with you, the viewers, with anybody who supports the show, always have a fantastic time. And yeah, again, these trips through the territories are just getting more in depth. Loving every minute of it. So I wanted to go back here, Papa Spokes, and talk about 1978 and the best of the NWA, that a show was created on TV. And this was kind of a coaching show. This is interesting. I don't know if you found any of these on YouTube or if you've seen them before, but essentially there are just the best of the NWA matches being reviewed amongst some of the boys live on television.
Yeah, I've only watched one or two of them, but how controversial from the time. They were almost kind of bending the rules of kayfabe there, and very controversial for the time. I don't think there was a huge blowback from it or anything, but interesting that they do that for sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Thought it was an interesting take anyway. Again, with those name changes, Worldwide Wrestling Worldwide Wrestling 1978 was what the name had changed to. This is what inevitably became not the start of, but that Worldwide Wrestling that eventually turned into some of the stuff that we would find later on that would eventually become WCW. But the path to get there, it was quite an interesting one. I mean, we've talked about Black Saturday here on the channel and GCW and the whole deal. And the question that gets brought up a lot is what if the tables had been different, if the TV deal would have gone the way of Jim Crockett Promotions at the time? Would things have gone the same? And McWiggin, subscribe to the channel for a month. You get a spin of the money spinner. Thanks, brother. Appreciate the support here.
Yeah.
As always. Thank you very much. But yeah, how do you feel about this, Pop Spokes? Would everything have gone down the way it went down, or would it have been completely different had that TV deal not been muddied up and changed back in the day?
Well, of course, it's hard to say, but we do have the benefit of hindsight. I'm of two minds about it. I think that on the one hand, Crockett Jr. had a different idea than his dad. Not so different, but he wanted to add on to his dad's idea of getting that entertainment promotions company going. But Crockett Jr., of course, focusing on pro wrestling, he wanted to expand a little bit, but not that much. He wanted to expand the company from what his dad had, but he wasn't trying to get national with the whole thing. Crockett at one point did have a national TV deal. He actually went national with TV before Vince McMahon Jr. ever did. But aside from the TV, and believe me, there wasn't as much money in TV deals as there is today. Let's put it that way. His bread and butter was still made on touring house shows, but Crockett started to spread himself a little bit too thin because as his TV started to get bigger reach on a national level, out to Washington and Oregon, out to California on the West Coast, they felt like they should maybe start doing live shows out there to capitalize on the audiences that were watching them on TV. And this was just going to be difficult in the days of wrestling workers driving, getting to their shows by hook or by crook, as I like to say, driving hours on the road with each other. And then now you got to go from Atlanta, Georgia, or from Raleigh, North Carolina, for shows in Los Angeles, San Jose, Sacramento, Portland. It's a tough one to get them all the way across the country like that and back. You got to pay those guys a lot of money to do stuff like that. You got to pay all your crews to go out there. Crockett had bought the TV truck with all the production stuff for taping his shows. He was a front runner in that way, really buying up some of that technology in order to get his product out on the airwaves. But it ended up being a great cost to him in that attempted expansion, and I think it reacted. Excuse me, it reacted negatively with the promotion as a whole.
Yeah, it sure did. Now I know that we could be here all night listing every single professional wrestler that stepped inside of a ring for Jim Crockett Promotions. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
I want to know from you, Papa Smokes, what were some of the names that you feel were a turning point that really started to draw money and do really well during the different eras, or who are the real standout stars of Jim Crockett Promotions, in your opinion?
I mean, on a singles level, it would go back to Crockett Sr., who would have had Lou Thesz, Danny Hodge, some of the Killer Kowalski guys like that, and then the tag teams as well. A number of great tag teams, but during the era that we're more familiar with, and we're going to just bring it back to the late 70s and throughout the 80s. I mean, anyone who is anyone in wrestling, but everybody knows Crockett made a whole bunch of money with Ric Flair, made a whole bunch of money with Rick Steamboat as Flair's opponent, and then not to mention tag team wrestling. Steiners, Road Warriors, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, Fantastics, and God, it just goes on from there. There are many, many more. And then Crockett's next big guy up was going to be, of course, Magnum TA. But we all know the sad story of what happened there.
Yeah.
Sounded like the entire NWA board was on board with having Magnum TA as quite assuredly almost the next guy after Flair. That would have been the big baby face to take the belt off Flair and have a huge run as the NWA champion. Everybody knew Terry Allen was very dedicated to the sport. He was young, he was hungry, he was soaking it all in. He had all the greatest wrestlers and all the veterans teaching him every step of the business along the way. Allen was good looking, had a great body. He was working on his body even more. He wanted to be a big, muscular guy like Lex Luger, and he was more than halfway there. But we all know that from his motorcycle or was it a motorcycle or a car accident? I think it was his Porsche. So you know how much he was getting paid at that time. After that accident, no more wrestling, no more walking, no more nothing. And what a huge blow to the company that was, and to the whole NWA, who had their next golden boy all lined up.
Yeah, I mean they've been met with tragedy after tragedy when it comes to some of the big names that have ever crossed the sport there, for
Yep.
sure. And again, you're right on every level. Again, you could name a ton of wrestlers that were there that drew money for the
Oh,
company as well too. One name I want to bring up, whether this one gets us in trouble with half of the viewers or not, someone who owes a lot of their career to this time in professional wrestling and working for Jim Crockett, and has talked about him, and you can find a lot about him if you choose to sit down and watch the show that so many people choose not to watch. Jim Cornette very much owes a lot of his time to this time of professional wrestling with Jim Crockett Promotions. And I believe Pop Smokes is frozen out. So I will again. He's dead in the water when I say that name. As soon as I bring it up, he freezes on screen. I've gotten the whole place in trouble here already, just with that one comment, that one name. And Papa Smokes is out like a light here tonight on Ring Respect Radio. I'm sure he'll be back with us momentarily. This tends to be a once a stream sort of thing here, but we will give Papa Smokes a chance to unfreeze from this moment in time and come on back to us. I think I'm still with you guys. I mean, I hope I am anyway. Let me know in the comment section if you're still. Yep, must be, because I see Pop Smokes is completely dropped from the stream. I'm sure he will be logging back any second now to hop back in and join us to finish our talk about Jim Crockett Promotions. Here he is. He's jumped backstage. He's moving again. He's back. It's Papa Smokes. Welcome back, brother.
Yeah, good to be back. I think you might have pissed off the internet gods
I
who you were
did.
going to bring up there.
That's it. I bring up Cornette's name, and all of a sudden everything freezes and the world comes to an end. I was just saying the Cornette, again, has talked heavily about his time in Crockett Promotions, and you can learn a lot about, a lot from him, a lot about that history. Again, if you can get past the things that Jim says and Jim does that really pisses off the IWC. And I'm not saying that we condone or agree with everything that Mr. Cornette says, but if you can look past it for one time and head on over and to listen to his talk about Jim Crockett and working for Jim Crockett, you can learn a hell of a lot of history. That's about a 50-minute plus conversation that he has on his show all about his time in Jim Crockett Promotions.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure even more than that if you added it all up. And yeah, you think what you want about Cornette, but he's one of the true, he was the original wrestling nerd, like he was studying everything about professional wrestling, everything he could get his hands on in the pre-internet age. So when he got into the business and when they offered him a spot as a manager, and he got this kind of thrown together tag team, but of these two extremely talented guys, Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton, they knew that they could make money. They knew that if they put their heads together with the experience of the two other guys and with the learned knowledge of Cornette, that they could get something going. And those guys could have worked anywhere in the country once they got their act going, because they had taken tag team wrestling to a complete science. They were teaching lots of other tag teams how to do it, but you can see the way the business was, that as soon as Cornette and the Midnight Express got established as a proper tag team, their goal was always to work for Jim Crockett Promotions, formerly known as Mid-Atlantic. It was one of the huge promotions in the country, second only to New York, probably in its size and reach, and by the other talent that were going there. They knew that that was the place to be. That was the place to make all the money and to make your name in front of lots more fans every single night.
Yeah, you bet. I know we're kind of getting closer to the top of the hour here, Papa Smokes, and I want to give you opportunity to say everything that you can. But Before I give you the floor to talk about any of the last things that you got to say on Jim Crockett Promotions, and again, we can always carry this conversation on at a later date with more about them. I just want to mention that the last time that the name Jim Crockett Promotions, JCP, was used was when a team up of David Crockett and Conrad Thompson in 2022 listed Ric Flair's last matchup, July 31st, 2022, as a event promoted under Jim Crockett Promotions.
Yeah, isn't that interesting too, eh? And completely fitting. What city was that held in? Do you remember, Bob?
I can find that out for us right now. So that matchup was in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That might not have been one of the cities. I imagine Nashville was run by somebody else during the 80s and all that, but still very fitting for that area and fitting for that match. I mean, Flair and Crockett together, just even those two, how much money did they make? I mean, back in the 80s, Crockett was having years of the company making 15, 20, 25 million, something like that. And that's a lot, double that to put it in today's dollars. That's a profitable wrestling company. You think Tony Khan's making that much?
Sadly, no, unless his dad keeps paying him a bunch of money and he considers that making that kind of money, but
Yeah,
not quite the same, I don't believe.
I'm not trying to drag Tony. I realize he's not going to make any money until he pays for that awful video game that they put out. But by the same token, putting Flair's match in the South, in a town that he was big in, just an absolutely great idea. And there was probably a lot of fans like us, guys that have been watching for many, many years, that, you know, it's like going and seeing your favorite band 30 years after they had their hits or whatever. It's not quite the same, but it gives you the feelings you had when you were young, a little bit of the excitement you had when you were young. We're all chasing that, right? Everybody that's over 30, you want all the stuff back that made you happy as a kid. You want your toys back, you want your books back, because it gives you those real memories of childhood, of happiness, and of the time when your mind was free and soaking everything in.
A time when we enjoyed Saturdays without beer.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, I'm not bashing beer. Beers on Saturdays is always a good time. But I'm going to give you the floor, Pops, folks. Any last words and thoughts or conversation that you had in your notes about Jim Crockett Promotions that you wanted to let people know about?
Well, just that the guys ran what sounded like a straight up promotion, very little funny business. Didn't sound like there was a lot of strife or fights or anything like that, because they ran a tight ship, and everybody got good payoffs there. There was good booking. There was strong office, like the business and the office were strong. That can very much help a wrestling company, just having the books, having the bookings, having the dealings with the talent, having the dealings with interpromotional, all that stuff can make for a nice, harmonious promotion. And that's what drew all the stars there. Guys that were traveling in their cars, splitting the gas money. We'll talk about this in future episodes of this, but the territories were pretty big. Crockett had stuff going on in 3, maybe even 4 different states. So the guys were chartering those small Cessna planes so that they could make their dates more quickly. God, Flair is the champion. There's a million crazy stories about him wrestling in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then they've got him booked in Miami that same night, like 5 hours later. So he's got to jump on the plane and fly down there, jump into a car once he gets there, speed to the venue, and they're just there in time with half an hour before his world title match, which who knows is going to be against, I don't know the specifics of this, but it would be against Florida's top guy. It might be Dusty Rhodes, might be anybody. And yeah, it might be a 40-minute match, might be a 50-minute match, might be a 60-minute Broadway. You never know. But that's what they needed out of an NWA champion, was a guy that could go, guy that could handle the travel, just the drudgery of traveling all the time, different hotel rooms, cars, waiting, all the rest of it, and still get to the ring and put on those unbelievable performances like Flair did. A lot of people drag Flair now, but he did immeasurable great stuff for the business, just in the way that he kind of set the tone for what a world champion should look like, should act like. And that was part of the promotional support of Jim Crockett Promotions. They supported him. They knew he was money. They made him big. They treated him good, and they all made money together. Funny how that works out, hey?
Amazing how that works out. And again, you can talk about, you know, dragging people nowadays. Yeah, there's a lot of people doing a lot of shitty things that, you know, it left a great body of work behind them. Let's not kid ourselves. And that's what you and I do. We try to talk about the history without trying to get into the shitty things that some people decide to do later on in their life, or the comments that they make in their personal life, what they say outside of that professional wrestling ring. Horrible stuff, whatever. We're still going to talk about the history in order to educate here, as art is greater than the artist. I love that comment right there from Big Wiggin.
Yes.
But yes, anything else that you'd like to add here, Pop Smokes, before we call it a wrap on Ring Respect Radio and make way for our good friends over at the Honor Ramble?
Well, not really, but it's still, even though we had a rousing hour of discussion about this topic, there's lots more that we didn't have time to go into too. I mean, we talked about the genesis of Jim Crockett Promotions with Jim Crockett Sr. and handing it over to Junior and all the great business Junior did. But there's a huge story to be told about the fall of Jim Crockett Promotions too. We talked a little bit about how he tried to expand nationally, not to take over the whole business, but to just push the company forward and to try and compete with McMahon in New York a little bit. It set him back a bit because he didn't have the company infrastructure completely to handle that. But at the same time, there were different things going on in the business, and there were decisions made that didn't help the company out so much. We of course know that McMahon was trying to expand into the South, and that was screwing with Jim Crockett as well. But we also know that Crockett ended up selling the company to Ted Turner, who then rebranded it as WCW. You started doing a bunch of the reading into that. That's an entirely wild story. So if we have to do a part 2 to Jim Crockett Promotions, that would be fair enough, because next to WWE, this is probably the biggest promotion that's ever existed in North America.
For sure it has. And again, I am all for doing follow-ups to any of these promotions. It's great to be able to go down this road, learn a lot of the history, and also to be talking about this with anybody who takes that interest. Again, I want to say that if you are not watching this live, you are watching the replay of this, whether it be on the Video Bros Network on YouTube or our local establishment on YouTube, make sure to give us a subscribe, a thumbs up, leave us a comment in the comment section below, turn on that notification bell. You'll know every time that we have stuff going on here on both channels. But yes, make sure comments, likes, appreciate it every single time. And thanks for teaching me, lad, says McWiggin. That's what we're here for, brother. Glad we could educate and anything like that. Papa Smokes, anything else you want to add before I go and, spend a whole lot of money on the next portion of the show?
For sure. Yes, I'm a little bit scattered tonight, but there is one more thing I wanted to mention. And that is, just like you were saying, to any of the viewers that want to get into this, if you look up Jim Crockett Promotions on YouTube, there are a couple of big playlist channels that carry the entire TV shows for that region, so that you're not just cherry picking the matches and the wrestlers that you want to watch. I highly recommend watch the whole show, watch the preliminary matches, watch the squash matches, watch the job guy matches, and watch how they set the cards up. It's different than a house show for a TV show a little bit, but some of them it's a great wrestling education, but some of them are hilarious too, because you get to see the old TV commercials from the 70s and 80s. That's really hilarious. You get to see the promos. You get to see Bob Caudle and the other classic wrestling announcers in action. So if you get the chance, watch some of those playlists. They'll just come up as episodes. They're just like on TV, it's not an hour, but without the commercials, it's 48 minutes or something. Tons of those episodes. I want to watch them all. They're hilarious, but they're also a great, great wrestling resource for developing your knowledge of pro wrestling and the way that a TV show is set up as well. Just as you and I work as the video bros for PPW, I'm always interested in how they structure the TV shows, how they edit them, how they present them, how they order, do the formats and all that stuff. Fascinating, and just another awesome thing to watch instead of another SmackDown or an NXT or something that you watch every week. Try some of these old episodes. They're hilarious, and you will learn something as well.
You sure will. You'll have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. And then you can also join us all the time here on Ring Respect Radio to be, as you're more educated, these episodes of Trip Through the Territories are going to be that much more entertaining for you. But Pop Smokes, it's time to spend a whole lot of money because here it comes, the most expensive ticker in professional wrestling podcasting today. It's Papa Smokes' ticker. Tell me where you at, brother.
All right, man. I got the ticker of the gods going right here. I can tell you with great certainty that I am on Elon Musk's free speech wonderland, formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. I am at smokes_papa. I am also on Twitch at papa_smokes_.
Beauty. And now we're going to go over to my ticker right there. I am Real Bobby Munson over on the X. On Instagram and Threads, you can find us at Video Bros SK. And then, of course, Twitch, it's at Video Bro_Bobby Munson. As for what I got coming up, you're going to be able to join me this Saturday night. It is MLWS Tech Underground, Lucha Underground, something of the sorts. But I'm going to be watching it. I'm going to be telling you all the action as it happens on the spot. Then on Sunday, join me at 11 a.m. Eastern time for my gaming channel. It's going to be Point of View, where we're going to do some gaming, have some fun. As always, a chill Sunday afternoon. And yes, what else do I got coming up? Oh, well, of course, we always got PPW coming up, Office folks. You know that you got PPWs on a Saturday. You can join us every Saturday afternoon. And guess what? This week, I'm not going to make a mistake and upload the same match that I did twice. I'm going to give you a brand new match this weekend. And we got a few hammered out here tonight. So really appreciate that. I really appreciate that man right there, McWiggin, joining us. Thank you for coming by the show here tonight. And everybody who's showed us some support as of late, we appreciate every single one of you. We want you to stay tuned right now because the Honor Rumble is coming up, where Auntie Collins is going to be joined by Kimmy once again, 3-time guest on the show. He's going to be talking all things Ring of Honor Wrestling. From myself, from Papa Smokes, we thank you for joining us. We will see you next Thursday night. Take care, everybody.